It's August 14th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the upcoming Trilateral Summit between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. President Yoon Suk-yeol will depart for the U.S. this Thursday for the talks on Friday at Camp David. The first ever standalone summit between the three countries is likely to sharpen their security cooperation. The 2023 World Scout Jamboree has come to an end, but many Scout members remain here in South Korea and are enjoying key cultural activities. And over in Hawaii, the Maui wildfires have become the deadliest blaze in modern U.S. history, as the death toll climbs to at least 93 now. When the leaders of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan gather at Camp David this Friday, they'll aim to build and polish up a trilateral cooperative mechanism to tackle North Korea and other regional challenges. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young starts us off.
South Korea, the United States, and Japan will establish a trilateral system for multi-layered cooperation to face security and economic challenges in the Indo-Pacific region jointly. That's according to Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor ahead of the Camp David talks this Friday between Presidents Yoon Suk-yeol, Joe Biden and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Gathering at the secluded presidential venue, the leaders will focus on institutionalizing a distinctive mechanism for cooperation.
The leaders are set to discuss the common vision and basic principles for trilateral cooperation and establish a comprehensive and multi-layered cooperation system in various fields and at all levels.
On security, the leaders will look to further strengthen their joint response to common threats in the region, namely North Korea's growing nuclear and missile capabilities, with practical military measures. US Ambassador to Japan Rahm Emanuel said last week that the joint statement would feature the regularization of top-level meetings to at least once a year, annual joint military training, along with intel sharing and cyber cooperation to deter North Korea. A senior Yoon official said the leaders' discussion will have the final word on such details, and that the format and the semantics of the trilateral body are being ironed out. Another key agenda item is cooperating to procure economic security with talks on supply chains, energy and advanced technologies. With the trilateral framework to strengthen their policy coordination on various issues, the trio also plan to join forces with other regional players like the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to ensure freedom, peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. With the focus on cooperation, the senior official said the leaders won't discuss Japan's release of Fukushima wastewater, and their joint statement is unlikely to include strong words on China. The Camp David meeting is the first ever standalone summit to be held by the three countries. Their dialogues began in 1994 and were always held on the sidelines of other international events. Their talks on Friday add further momentum to fast improving relations between Seoul and Tokyo after the neighbours fully restored bilateral trade and intel sharing in recent months. Seoul says bilateral summits are also likely to take place after a luncheon and a joint press conference at Camp David.
Marking the longest time that the three countries' leaders have spent together. Officials say that the Camp David meeting will make diplomatic history in the 21st century and a paradigm shift in Indo-Pacific security. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has called on his regime to rapidly improve its missile production capabilities to better meet the demands of its frontline and missile units. That's according to the North Korean media on Monday, citing remarks by Kim during visits to factories that produce strategic missiles, rocket launchers, and other military weapons on Friday and Saturday. The field inspection came just a week after he conducted a field guidance of major munitions factories, at a time when South Korea and the U.S. are planning to hold their annual Ulji Freedom Shield exercise set for later this month. Pyongyang has long described the joint military exercise as a rehearsal for an invasion. And in the meantime, the first ever standalone summit between South Korea, the U.S. and Japan is expected to define their trilateral security cooperation even more clearly now, especially on the issues here on the Korean Peninsula. Let's discuss it with Mr. Mark Barry this morning. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Yes, good morning, Dami.
Talks on North Korea will be among the top agenda items, no surprise there. But how significant will the topic of North Korea be in the discussions this time?
Well, it's a huge part of it, but it's certainly not the only part of it. And certainly we're not going to find the name China overtly discussed, but that is certainly part of the background. What I would suggest is that this summit is to make up for the disunity which cannot be tolerated that we saw in 2017, 2018 between South Korea, Japan, and the U.S., and particularly where the previous president kind of looked on and didn't really do anything about it. I think President Biden is trying to make up for that error, and he's trying to strengthen the participation of these two allies who are both treaty allies of the United States. And so it's something that's necessary at this time. However, it's not going to be a be-all solution. It's an important step forward, but it's not going to lead in and of itself to a breakthrough of peace or of major diplomacy. But it's a step, unfortunately, which has to be taken at this time.
Indeed. Now, the beefed-up security cooperation is likely to be inked in a joint statement on North Korea. That's highly likely. That's upcoming. Now, what details do you think will be included this time? I mean, will there be more emphasis on the trilateral cooperation against missile launches? What do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, they want to regularize this trilateral summit to happen annually. The national security advisors of each country hopefully would gather twice a year. The meetings among defense chiefs and chiefs of the joint staffs of each country to meet even more regularly. And this is something that sends its own message. But more importantly, should be tighter defense cooperation, the ability to be able to have an easier time of transmitting intelligence information about missile launches and all sorts of other technical data that oftentimes has to go through the U.S. and then to the other ally. And I think this is something that President Biden wants to put a stop to. So this is all for the best. The joint statement, however, will cover other areas of economic security. It will imply a lot of other areas. So North Korea won't be the only topic, but it's probably the paramount topic.
Definitely. Now, the thing is, things are expected to be rocky again here on the Korean Peninsula in the month of August, right? With the Trilateral Summit coming up and also the South Korea-U.S. Ulji Freedom Shield exercise, which is annual. Now, how will the Trilateral Summit, do you think, change the situation here on the Korean Peninsula in the month of August?
Well, I think this is why we see certain things happening. I think that there are two things that Kim Jong-un always has a problem with, and one is military exercises. In fact, I would distinguish that from the presence of U.S. troops, because he was quite clear to Mike Pompeo, according to Pompeo's memoirs, that he didn't necessarily have a problem with U.S. troops. What he has a problem with is the exercises which his military can only construe, and in fact, correctly, are directed against Kim and North Korea. So you have that problem, but on top of that, North Korea can only survive in the climate in Northeast Asia and in East Asia overall by giving the appearance of leaning on China and Russia and playing one off of the other, even though none of them are terribly reliable allies, and they use each other all for their own purposes. But at least publicly, given the fact that this trilateral summit is happening at Camp David, Kim has to do these kinds of actions in order to continue the appearances that he's been giving to the world. But that belies, I think, completely different realities under the surface for North Korea, for China, and for Russia.
Mark, before we let you go, let's talk about things happening up in the north, right? The North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, reportedly had another round of inspections at weapons factories over the weekend after he did so earlier this week, right? Now, What's the motive behind the visit this time?
Well, it's a continuation of visits made earlier in August, and look, it's cost-free. It's you bring a photographer, and then you post it on the internet. These visits probably would have been made anyway, but a big deal is being made of them. And all the Pyongyangologists are trying to figure out who's who in the pecking order and what facility is this and so forth and so on. But basically, it's something he has to do in the lead up to the Ulchi Freedom Guardian exercises, and particularly at this time of the summit. But unfortunately, you know, there does not seem to be any arena of a breakthrough in this third year of the Biden administration. And this is a tragedy because the climate in 2018 was different, but nobody handled it in the proper way. And it's very unfortunate that things are back to this point. But I have to say that President Biden is doing the best that he can under the conditions. And I should finally note that these are very stressful conditions for him domestically, and more domestic news may rattle the world coming out of Georgia even later this week on the same day that the Trilateral Summit takes place at Camp David.
Sure, let's see what details come out of the Trilateral this time at Camp David. Thanks so much for joining us all the way from New York this morning. You have a good night.
Yes, thank you very much.
The curtain officially came down on the 25th World Scout Jamboree last Friday, with over 40,000 Scouts from all around the world reuniting here in Seoul at a grand K-pop concert. Our Shin Se-byuk has the highlights.
A vibrant array of lights filled the Seoul World Cup Stadium on Friday as the K-pop Super live concert brought the 25th World Scout Jamboree to a close. Some scouts were singing and dancing along with the performances while waving heart-shaped light sticks while enjoying the last moment of the official jamboree. A total of 19 K-pop acts, including New Jeans, IVE, and NCT Dream, took the stage, entertaining the 43,000 audience members from over 140 countries. These K-pop stars added a spectacular touch to the grand finale of the 2023 World Scout Jamboree.
The most impressive was New Jeans. We've seen them go very viral online, so it was very nice to see them live finally.
Everyone seemed to have a blast just soaking in the concert experience.
Originally planned for Saemangeum's outdoor stage on the 6th of August, the location went through a couple of switches due to sweltering conditions and Typhoon Khanun, first to Jeonju World Cup Stadium before being moved to Seoul World Cup Stadium. There have been unexpected twists and turns which only made the participants eagerly await the moment.
I've had a great time anyway, regardless of what's happened, so this was just a nice way to end it.
Yeah, so. Exactly. I'm the same as well. I think definitely we'll be looking into some more K-pop.
After the concert wrapped up, the night sky was painted with colorful fireworks. With the K-pop concert, the 25th World Scout Jamboree concluded its 12-day-long journey. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
After the grand concert, participants headed home taking 12 days of sweet memories with them. But it's not over until it's really over. Some scouts are spending more time here in the country to get a longer taste of K-culture. Lee Seung-jae reports.
After 12 days, the 2023 World Scout Jamboree in South Korea came to an end over the weekend, with the official closing ceremony taking place last Friday. Participants were seen at the Incheon International Airport getting ready to go back home. For some, while the 12-day event had its ups and downs, it was a memorable moment for the teenagers.
I'm very sad because I had a really good time in the Jamboree. Despite all the things that went wrong, it was a really fun experience getting to meet people from all over the world.
And some of them thanked those that helped the Scouts in any way possible when help was needed.
I'm so emotional to leave Korea, and I find that I found out that the Koreans are so friendly and they have tried everything to like help the scouts.
While the intense heat wave was the reason so many of the participants were sent to hospitals in the early days of the event, one Scout member raised the issue of climate change, saying it's not Korea's fault that the intense heat led to a number of heat-related illnesses. And while many of the participants left the country after the conclusion of the World Scout Jamboree, others stayed behind to experience a bit more of the country, including a group of scouts from Morocco who visited Gyeongbokgung Palace, where they dressed up in Korea's traditional hanbok. Others enjoyed spending time at amusement park, getting in some thrills before departing the country, while some of the remaining scouts checked out popular tourist destinations like Namsan Seoul Tower. While the World Scout Jamboree might be a thing of the past now, the government says it will do all it can to cater to those that chose to stay behind to see more of what Korea has to offer. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's trade balance for the first half of 2023 saw its biggest deficit in 5 years, amid a slow recovery in inbound travelers. According to the Korea Tourism Organization on Monday, the country's travel trade balance for that period recorded a $4.65 billion of deficit, the biggest since the same period in 2018. Now, the figure is also a 123% increase compared to last year. This comes as outbound travelers in the first half of the year reached 66% of the 2019 pre-pandemic levels, whereas inbound travelers were only at 52.5%. But the recovery is expected to speed up with China's resumption of its group tours to South Korea. Tomorrow, August 15th, is Gwangbokjeol, or National Liberation Day here in South Korea. This is the day when Korea regained its independence from Japan in 1945 after 35 years of colonization. In light of the occasion, our Song Yujin takes us to a special exhibition being held in the city of Glendale in the U.S.
In Glendale, Los Angeles, stands the Statue of Peace. First installed in Seoul in 2011, this statue remembers the young women and girls who were forced into sexual slavery by Japan during World War II. A replica found its place in Glendale 2 years later. In light of this, curator Chun Hae-yeon has been holding a special exhibition every year since 2014.
After the statue was installed, Japanese far-right activists filed lawsuits and sent protest emails. The mayor of Glendale encouraged the Korean community to take action. I initially organized the exhibition through donations, and since 2017, I've partnered with the city library.
The centerpiece, an installation called Remembrance Unveiled by Choi Jong-un. The empty chair resembles the one that's part of the peace statue.
So it's a clear acrylic chair that has the water, as well as the water of both cities and the soil from the cemetery from the Comfort Women.
The water from Korea came from the Imjingang River near the demilitarized zone, which Choi collected himself. Another installation is Water Shadow Jeongansu by Kim Chang-gyum, which projects videos of Korean comfort women on a bowl-like structure. The rippling waves represent the pain and shame the victims had to endure. Ju Do-young's faces are portraits of contemporary Korean women ranging from a kindergartner, a monk, to an elderly woman. There are also photographs of Indonesian comfort women by Dutch artist Jan Benning and a separate section showcasing the works of Korean students from local schools. The curators hope the exhibition can shed light on the issue, foster understanding, and bring about change.
We didn't know very little about comfort women when we first started doing the exhibition, so it's been a constant education for us and everybody who sees it.
Japan remains unchanged. They continue to promote pro-Japanese policies in Glendale, but Koreans, on the other hand, seem to have relatively little interest. The rights of comfort women haven't improved a lot when compared to the past, so it would be great if we could raise awareness.
You can explore Women and War at Glendale Library until September 24th. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin on the Hawaiian island of Maui, where at least 93 people have been killed following devastating wildfires that began last Tuesday. Now, the death toll makes it the deadliest wildfire in the U.S. in over 100 years. And according to Maui's governor, the death toll is likely to rise significantly as hundreds of people are still unaccounted for. Hundreds of people lost their homes and thousands were forced to evacuate from the fires that completely destroyed the town of Lahaina on the west side of the island. And while fires are still burning, they are now mostly under control. Wildfires also impacted Big Island and also triggered evacuations, but damage there has been limited. The wildfires broke out amid prolonged dry conditions in the region and were fanned by winds from Hurricane Dora. Now, the Russian Navy on Sunday fired warning shots at and boarded a cargo vessel in the Black Sea. According to Russia's defense ministry, one of its patrol vessels fired on the Palau-flagged Sukru-Okan ship after its captain failed to respond to a request to search for weapons. Moscow claims that the ship was headed to the Ukrainian port of Izmail, although data shows the ship was on its way to the Romanian port of Sulina. Moscow has previously said that it considers all ships heading toward Ukrainian waters to be potentially carrying weapons. The cargo ship was allowed to continue after the inspection. It's the first time Russia has fired on merchant ships beyond Ukraine since it refused to renew the UN-brokered grain deal in July. Now, Australia have reached the Women's World Cup semi-finals for the first time after a nail-biting penalty shootout against France. In a toughly contested match in Brisbane on Sunday, neither side could find the net. The game ended goalless and the World Cup co-hosts came out on top in the resulting penalty shootout, winning 7-6. Australia will face England in the semi-finals after the European champions beat Colombia 2-1 in Sydney. Spain face Sweden in the other semi-final. Now, the Final Four setup means that this World Cup will have a first-time winner. And finally, around 150 drivers took part in a unique annual endurance race over the weekend on lawn mowers capable of reaching speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour. Renamed the BLMRA 500 from its usual title of Le Mans to mark the 50th anniversary of the British Lawnmower Racing Association, a special extended edition of the race was held in West Sussex in England. Now, 50 teams of 3 people, including some from the US and Europe, took turns to complete 500 laps of the 1.4-kilometer-long track. The overall winner of this year's race was Bullseye Racing, who completed the full 500 laps in the shortest time.
Good morning. A heat wave advisory is in place across much of Korea, and coastal areas like Busan and Jeju had a tropical night. And most parts will be seeing highs going up to the 30s this afternoon, except in the east of Gangwon-do province with rain in the forecast. And expect to see 5 to 20 millimeters of rain through Wednesday afternoon if you're there. Meanwhile, the rest of the country will see 5 to 30 millimeters of passing rain along with thunder and lightning. Now, Seoul and Gwangju will go up to 33 degrees Celsius, but feels like temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher than what the thermometer points at today. And until sudden showers pass by, it will feel rather muggy with strong UV rays. Now, tomorrow is the Liberation Day here in Korea. Jeollanam-do province and Jeju will see passing rain, while the rest of the country will have repeat of today's warmth. Morning and evening temperatures have gotten a little more bearable after the typhoon, though the afternoon heat will stay with us through to the end of the month. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Korea time. Stay safe wherever you are.